With the invasion of Super Earth, which we held off successfully, great job everyone, we get a very interesting addition to the game in the form of S.E.A.F squads that roam around on the battlefield. And while this may seem like a fun little thing, like, hey, cool, we got some buddies for us on the battlefield, and they actually, do a fair bit of damage, we can actually pull a whole ton of lore about how the S.E.A.F basic soldiers operate. Previously, we only really knew how the Helldivers operated, because, well, that's us. We didn't really know what the rest of the army did. All we saw was just like remnants of them on the battlefield when they had already been taken out and pushed out of the area. So today, we're gonna sit down and break down how exactly the rest of S.E.A.F operates, because we know about the Helldivers, but I think we can pull a whole lot of interesting info from not only these new S.E.A.F squads, but some of the other objectives around the map, like the S.E.A.F artillery locations and the S.E.A.F SAM sites. So buckle in, because I think this will be a real interesting one. Oh, and also, if you don't subscribe to the channel, Grandpa Democracy is going to take all your socks. That's right, after the invasion of Super Earth, Grandpa Democracy went insane, and he's a sock thief now, and he only refers to himself in the third person for some reason. Yeah, we're going to have to do something about that guy one of these days. Anyways, right into it, let's talk about the most exciting new addition here, the S.E.A.F squads. During the invasion of Super Earth, we finally got to see the S.E.A.F General Army in action on the battlefield. And now, these S.E.A.F squads we're seeing were most likely part of the Planetary Defense Forces. And I'll break down here a little bit in how S.E.A.F is broken up just for a refresher. I have made a video about this in the past, but it feels helpful to call out again here. Now, S.E.A.F is not just one giant conglomerate of random troops running around. They have some organization here. And for those of you that don't know, S.E.A.F stands for Super Earth Armed Forces. And they're broken up into multiple branches, the most well-known of which is, of course, the Helldivers Corps. And then you also have Super Earth High Command that controls over everyone, the Helldivers and the other groups I'm about to talk about. You've got the Super Earth Army that deals with all the land combat and stuff, you've got the Super Earth Navy that flies all the spaceships, and you've got the Colonial Militias that defend all of Super Earth's planets that are more in the backlines of the fight. So, who exactly were the S.E.A.F squads we saw running around on Super Earth then in the greatest fight of the game so far? There's a pretty good chance that they were the Colonial Militia mixed in with some regular Super Earth Army. Like I mentioned, the purpose of the Colonial Militias is to defend all the planets that Super Earth has control of. They're mostly just random citizens that had a Liberator laying around, and if the need ever arises, they'll pick that Liberator up, throw on their nice bright blue armor, and go fight a Terminator or something. And that's mostly who we saw running around, because they were easy to call up, they're already on the planet. But I think with how important Super Earth is, there's a good chance that some of these squads were from the Super Earth Army as well. They almost certainly have some regular units of the Super Earth Army stationed on Super Earth because, you gotta defend the capital planet. And while it is great to know who exactly we're fighting alongside with in the battle for Super Earth, there's so much more we can pull from seeing how these S.E.A.F soldiers operated on the battlefield and what kind of equipment they have with them, and oh, this is gonna be a fun one. Now, a wonderful user on Reddit compiled a whole bunch of things we learned about the S.E.A.F soldiers, so I gotta call him out here because this is a fantastically written post. Jeff QC1, you the man. So I'm gonna go through some of his points here and expand upon them. So we're gonna actually start out a little bit further down Jeff's list because I want to talk about how these S.E.A.F soldiers operate in squads, it seems like. Almost always they spawn in squads about 5 to 6, and I mean, it may seem like less when you run into them because they're already partially taken out by some Illuminate, but they typically spawn in squads of 5 to 6, and they have a very typical squad composition of 4 basic soldiers, sometimes one has a radio pack, not always, and 2 heavy weapon soldiers that still have their Liberator, but also have EAT anti-tank weapons. Now, this image here is a fantastic example of your typical S.E.A.F squad. You've got the 6 S.E.A.F soldiers here, all of them armed with Liberators, and 2 of them are the heavy weapon soldiers that have the EAT anti-tank rockets. Now, in this one here, you don't specifically see the radio operator. I'll slide in a new image here quick. There's what the radio operator guy looks like. They don't always seem to spawn in a squad, or maybe they drop it when they decide they need to run and they're trying to lose some weight. But this is what a typical squad will look like. Now, the equipment these S.E.A.F soldiers have shows off a lot about High Command's thinking when they created this squad system for them to operate in. They prepared them with the weapons they needed to fight the enemies of Super Earth. They didn't just say, all right, everyone grab a Liberator and get out there. They thought, okay, we're going to send these guys out in 6-person squads, and they're going to have heavier weapons deal with heavier targets, the EAT anti-tank rocket. And the radio guy is most likely because they do not get the same ability to call in stratagems like the Helldivers. If you think about it, when you're calling in new weapons, when you're calling in orbital bombardments, you throw the little stratagem balls. those are probably pretty expensive, and they don't just give them to every single person in the S.E.A.F army. They can't be calling in stuff off a Super Destroyer. They're just not high enough level for that in the army. But they likely use this radio pack here to radio back to other S.E.A.F sites, like the S.E.A.F artillery sites or the S.E.A.F SAM sites. Like, for example, they have the radio guy, and they're like, oh boy, there's a big devastator over there. Quick, call in a S.E.A.F artillery strike on that. They can radio back to the artillery site that's behind them and have them launch a couple artillery shells onto that guy's face. So, moving on to the next point here from our friend Jeff QC1, it says that these S.E.A.F soldiers cannot operate any crude stratagems. Like, if you call down in a heavy machine gun emplacement, an anti-tank cannon, they can't hop in the seat and start firing. They don't know what to do with it. Now, the most likely answer for this, the devs probably did not have time to code in getting these S.E.A.F soldiers to fire from weapon emplacements that you call down into random locations. That's got to be a whole lot harder to do than just have them walk around the battlefield and shoot at stuff. But we can jump to conclusions instead, and in fact, I like jumping to conclusions. I think this means that they aren't trained to use these kind of weapon stations. And again, like I said, I think most of what we were dealing with on Super Earth was the colonial militias, and they picked up their Liberator armor and were like, let's get out there and defend Super Earth. They're not trained on these heavier weapon stations. They don't know what to do with them. They don't know how to reload them and get them set up. They're not trained for that. I think if we had more of the regular Super Earth army on the planet, they might be able to handle some of these simpler weapons, like the HMG and anti-tank cannon. Those can't be that hard to operate. You jump on the machine gun, you use the trigger, you're good to go. I think there is some stratagems that just even the norm army is not trained to use either. Like, say for example, you call in an exosuit. I doubt a regular S.E.A.F soldier in the army knows what to do with an exosuit. That is a far more advanced piece of technology, and I'm sure only Helldivers are trained on how to operate those. And now, the last point from Jeff QC1 here that I want to talk about is the fact, which I love that they coded into the game, that you, as the Helldiver, can command around the S.E.A.F soldiers. If you go up to them and use the emote, follow me, the S.E.A.F squads will actually follow you around the battlefield and fight with you, which, oh my god, chef's kiss. It is so great to walk around the battlefield and have them fight with you. It feels incredible. It's what I always wanted in the game. When I heard rumors they were testing out S.E.A.F squads, I was like, oh my god, I hope they'll fight with you. It's everything I wanted, but enough gushing over the devs' work here. Back to it. The fact that you can command them around as a Helldiver means that they truly see you as a higher rank and they are willing to listen to you. Now, going back to what I mentioned a little bit about the different branches of S.E.A.F, you have the Super Earth Army, and the Helldiver Corps is separate than the Super Earth Army. They're under a whole separate chain of command, likely, and probably are a higher rank than any general Super Earth Army grunt that's on the battlefield. So, when they see a Helldiver come in, they're like, oh my god, that's the Special Forces. Whatever they say we gotta do, they know what they're doing, we gotta listen to them. And I love that they coded that into the game, the fact that they look at you as a higher ranked soldier and they're like, yep, listen to them, they know what's going on. Now, something I want to talk about here that was not on Jeff's list is the S.E.A.F soldiers do seem to be reasonably trained to operate as a squad. Because, like I said, they have these heavy weapon soldiers that carry the EAT anti-tank rockets. Watching them on the battlefield, they don't just shoot those EAT rockets at anything, they actually wait for a heavy enemy. They don't just say, I have a rocket, there's a voteless, take it out. They actually seem to operate as a squad and say, oh my god, there's a flesh mob running at us. Quick, Jerry, shoot the rocket at him. And they actually wait till there's a target that's worthy of that rocket. Okay, I think that's enough talking about the S.E.A.F squads in general. Let's talk about some of the other interesting S.E.A.F emplacements that you find around the maps all over the different planets that Super Earth exists on. The first one I want to talk about here is the S.E.A.F artillery site. This is a fun little objective you can go do, load some shells in, and use it as a Helldiver. But why are these S.E.A.F artillery sites here? What is their purpose, and how do they fit into the whole structure of the S.E.A.F army as a whole? Because these are not Helldiver artillery sites. These are the S.E.A.F army artillery sites that we just show up and start using. Now, to truly explain how these artillery sites work first we need to take a quick little detour into the difference of how the Helldivers operate versus the difference in how the Super Earth army operates. The Helldivers are kind of like a scalpel. They go in and they take out very specific objectives that need to be taken care of in small squads so that A, they aren't detected as easily, they don't cause a whole huge response from the enemy, and that they can just do their job with heavy firepower that's allocated to them. Whereas the S.E.A.F army is meant to be like a wall. They are there to hold back the enemies of Super Earth. They are just mass numbers of them in a fight, all just liberators going to town, thousands of them on a battlefield. They're meant to be the wall that holds back the main force of the enemy, while the Helldivers go into the back and take out very key strategic objectives. And this leads into how our first site here, the S.E.A.F artillery site, works in. Because, like I mentioned, that the S.E.A.F army is the wall, and sometimes they do need heavy fire support. So these S.E.A.F artillery sites are most likely set up a good distance from the front lines, maybe a few miles and whatnot, where they can stay out of direct enemy fire and provide that fire support. We can tell they're fairly hastily set up, because at each S.E.A.F artillery site, you've just got one cannon and like a little bunker next to it that holds ammo and stuff. This here would not be hard to set up quickly. And what exactly does this S.E.A.F artillery site do for the main S.E.A.F forces that are fighting on the front line? This S.E.A.F artillery site is what the radio men that are in the S.E.A.F squads call back to when they need fire support. And this artillery here offers a wide variety of different answers to problems they may run into. It's got the napalm shells, the static shells, standard shells, the mini nuke, which, oh boy, I'd be scared to call that in, but this here offers an answer to problems that the S.E.A.F soldiers might run into. You got a big tank? Just hit it with a mini nuke. Call in the artillery and they'll take care of it. So, on to the next S.E.A.F site I want to talk about, the S.E.A.F SAM site. This site here is another side objective as a Helldiver you can go run around and turn on, and is fantastic for missions where you have to deal with air targets and enemies. This thing here is automatic and shoots down flying things like the Illuminate ships and the Automaton ships. It'll take them out automatically with missiles. But how exactly does this work into the S.E.A.F army? Now, the SAM site here is much more complex than the S.E.A.F artillery site. This here is not only more complex in how it is operated, and likely takes a specially trained S.E.A.F squad to use, it's much more complex in its construction. When you find these on the battlefield, they aren't just slapped onto a random concrete pad in the middle of nowhere. These things come out of like a bunker in the ground, and this probably takes a whole lot longer to build and is much more expensive. And they're almost always protecting somewhere. They're protecting a city, they're protecting a launch pad, they're not just out in the open like the artillery sites. And this leads probably more to their use. They're not something that's called in by the basic S.E.A.F infantry that's fighting on the front lines. This is something that's held back to defend against air attacks that are coming at important positions for the S.E.A.F army. And they're mainly meant to take down aircraft from the automatons, aircraft from the Illuminate. That's what they're here for. So they're probably not called in, more so as they are independently operating on their own, and they're just given the orders of, hey, if there's something flying around that is not from Super Earth, take it out. We don't want it here. But what exactly is a good SAM site without a radar to go along with it? Because I also want to discuss the radar sites that are around on every map. In the game, they function as a mechanic to show you all the points of interest around the map. If you complete the mini game and activate the tower, you can see all the points of interest and go find your tasty super samples and whatnot. But how exactly do they fit into the S.E.A.F army? Well, I think they have two main purposes. They function as a communication site, as well as a scanning site for the S.E.A.F SAMs. So let's talk about the first purpose quick. Communication. These sites likely exist for the S.E.A.F army to use to communicate up back to high command. You'll notice there's always at least one of these on a map, so that means that they are everywhere across planets. They're probably put into each sector very specifically to make sure that the local S.E.A.F forces have communication up to higher command. Because the S.E.A.F ground squads, each one of them has a little radio pack guy, but this probably only goes so far, only has a certain amount of range, and there is no way it can reach across space. So these sites likely exist to be the communication part of the S.E.A.F forces on the ground, so that if they run into an issue, they're like, oh my god, there's Terminids coming to attack. They can send that back off to a satellite, and that satellite can send a message off to high command through deep space. But I don't think that's the only purpose of these radar sites. I think they can also be used in coordination with the S.E.A.F SAM sites to deploy the missiles against aircraft coming in. Now, clearly they aren't needed to be used with the SAM sites, because if you go to a mission, you can activate the SAM battery without actually activating the radar site, so they don't need to work together to fully function. But I bet you it's an enhancement to the SAM site. Like, they function a lot better if this radar is on. Maybe they can see further. They have better warning of giant aircraft and giant bugs coming in that they can deal with. But clearly it's not a critical part to the SAM sites. It may actually still be an enhancement to them. And moving on to the final S.E.A.F site I want to talk about today, you've got the ICBM site. The ICBM site here is literally a nuclear missile. This here is probably much higher up the chain of command for the S.E.A.F army, and is operated by very high-level personnel, because if you're calling this thing in, there's a serious threat that needs to be dealt with. The S.E.A.F army likely uses these sites to take out major groupings of automatons. Like, if they're on a planet, they're like, oh my god, there's literally thousands of them over there. You know what would deal with that really well? A nuke. And what do you have here? Probably a very large group of S.E.A.F soldiers that is operating this nuclear missile here. And we know this is a much more important site, not only because it's much bigger and much more complex and literally has a nuclear missile in it, we also know it's more important because of just the missions that Helldivers do. Like I mentioned, the previous two sites, the artillery and the S.E.A.F site, they're side objectives in a mission. The Helldivers are doing a main thing. It's like, hey, if you want to turn on the artillery cannon to use, go for it. That's just have fun. But the launch of the ICBM is a main mission for the Helldivers. They think it's worthy to drop in Helldivers on this objective to go turn on that missile and launch it towards the enemies of Super Earth. So then, how does it fit into the army? There is definitely no way a basic S.E.A.F soldier on the ground with a radio pack is going to be like, hey, go call in a nuclear missile over there. I see a big bug. No, that's much higher up decision than that. This is most likely operated at a very high level in the S.E.A.F army. This is only called in when the generals of Super Earth call up and say, hey, we have got a giant grouping of automatons over there. We need to take them out at all costs. Launch one of the missiles. Now, again, this site differs from the artillery and SAM sites in where it's constructed as well, because this is not a short-range weapon. ICBM stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, so this here is meant to go very long distances. So these are likely only built at very specific points on planets because it can reach pretty much anywhere on the planet it needs to. So these are not built near the front lines. They are built hundreds of miles away, and then they will launch their missiles as needed. The idea is that they're only used as a last resort, and that hopefully the front lines are very far from them. Obviously, that doesn't always work out well. Maybe the enemy happened to attack very near here, and that's why it's now overrun, and the Helldivers need to come in and operate it. Whew, alright. Hopefully that was honestly more information than you ever wanted to learn about the S.E.A.F army, but I thought with the new squads, there was just so much interesting detail we could dig from them. I considered adding in the Super Earth Navy into this video to discuss them as well, and how they fit into the whole army structure of Super Earth and whatnot, but you know what? There's so much information on the Navy that I feel like that deserves its own video, so we're going to talk about that another time. So, as always, if you enjoyed this video, I'd love if you liked down below, left a comment to let me know what you think about the S.E.A.F army, and consider subscribing to the channel to stay tuned for more videos like this. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time.